What if I told you that behind the bright lights, booming pay-per-views, and the glamour of modern MMA lies a dark, uncomfortable truth?
Flag as a nod to his mother's side of 9 years.
What if some of the UFC's biggest moments were built on decisions the company hopes you never look too closely at? And what if the real cost of creating the fastest-growing sport in the world was paid by those who could least afford it? Today we dive deep into the stories the UFC would rather you forget. The scandals, the dangers, the tragedies, and the questions that still don't have answers. Is the UFC a sports empire or an empire built on silence?
Если есть, заберите в Канаду, хвала Аллаху, подальше от нас. Аузу билляхи минаш шайтанир раджим, чтобы не было.
1. Before the glory, there was chaos. No rules, no limits, no mercy. That was the original spirit of the UFC. Raw, violent, and shockingly unregulated. Fighters weren't just stepping into a cage, they were stepping into survival. The company proudly marketed itself as the most dangerous combat arena on Earth, and they weren't exaggerating. Massive weight differences, no time limits, minimal medical checks. Everything about those early events felt like an experiment gone too far. And yet, as the UFC grew, those brutal origins were quietly repackaged as legends of the early days.
Would just lay there. Oh, whoa! Oh! Right into an armbar! Phenomenal! Oh my goodness! Oh my God! No! Oh my God! Look at Ray Borg. Ray Borg is a savage.
Unbelievable.
But the truth doesn't disappear so easily. Some early fighters walked away with permanent injuries, earned almost nothing, and fought under conditions no modern athlete would accept. Why doesn't the UFC openly talk about how close it came to being banned forever? Why does that part of history feel brushed aside, softened, or romanticized? 2. The scale. The silent killer. Making weight is the real fight. That line is repeated again and again by fighters because it's not just painful, it's life-threatening.
And of all the superlatives...
Every UFC event shows fighters stepping onto the scale, bodies trembling, lips cracked, faces hollow. Fans cheer. The UFC cameras roll. But behind that one moment is a brutal truth. Fighters often dehydrate themselves to near collapse just to make weight. Some lose 20 to 30 pounds in 2 days. Some faint backstage. Some end up in hospitals. And some fighters around the world have died from the extreme pressure to shrink their bodies into impossible categories. If the danger is so well known, why hasn't the system changed? Why does the UFC keep promoting weigh-ins as if they're just another part of the show? And how many fighters secretly fear the scale more than the opponent waiting for them in the cage?
How can you get better?
Few grown men there who...
Shots. There's a good shot to the body.
Oh, nice.
He checked it.
No!
He hurt himself.
He hurt his leg, and it is all over. Anderson hurt his leg when the kick was checked.
3. The money they don't want to talk about. Billion-dollar empire, million-dollar fights, and fighters who can't afford rent. The UFC's success story shines like gold from the outside. But inside, far too many fighters earn shockingly little. Some take fights simply to pay bills. Some train while working part-time jobs. Some borrow money just to make it to fight week. Meanwhile, the organization restricts personal sponsorships, controls financial opportunities. How can a fighter risk their brain, their bones, their future for pay that barely covers training? And how many stay silent because complaining could cost them the only career they've got? 4. The knockout you cheered might be the memory they lose. The crowd erupts, the fighter collapses, and the brain suffers. The UFC is built on knockouts. Instant, shocking, electrifying moments that fans replay for years.
Look at the clock. 3. I mean, these guys are winging. 2. Boom!
waved it off. Complete astonishment inside.
But the long-term effects? Those don't make it into the highlight reels. CTE has become a terrifying reality in boxing and football, and MMA carries the same risks, maybe even greater. Fighters have publicly discussed memory loss, mood swings, depression, and confusion. But the UFC doesn't talk about CTE. It doesn't appear in press conferences. It doesn't appear in promotional documentaries. The steroid era. The ghost years. Strength beyond normal limits. Recovery that defied science. Before strict drug testing arrived, the UFC was a wild west of performance enhancers. Many fighters openly admit that PED use was extremely common.
Yeah, but it still doesn't make the difference. Yes, it does make the difference in an athlete. And the reason is, in the 80s, it was giving you more power, more stamina, more endurance. Now, man, with the technology, they have stuff that will change your reaction time, your confidence, your reset time.
Some of the sport's most legendary fights, iconic battles replayed again and again, were fought under conditions far from natural. But the UFC rarely acknowledges this era. They don't call it what fighters call it, the steroid era. Instead, history gets polished, edited, and retold in a way that avoids uncomfortable truths. The medical reality they don't show on camera. Blood, broken bones, concussions, and a curtain hiding everything else. Modern UFC events have world-class medical teams, but it wasn't always that way. In earlier years, medical standards varied wildly depending on the state or country. Fighters entered cage with torn ligaments, broken hands, even concussions they hid to avoid losing their paycheck.
Too good, man. And Petrosian still sort of awake, but he just curled up, and you could tell that was it.
And Kerry Hatley saving Petrosian.
Some received only basic pre-fight checks. Others walked into war already injured because withdrawing meant they couldn't feed their families. How many fighters pushed through pain that should have ended their careers? How many battles were fought by athletes already damaged before the first punch landed? Short notice fights. Heroic or desperate? Stepping in on 5 days' notice, bravery or survival? Fans love short notice replacements. The UFC loves them even more. The narrative is always the same. A fighter saves the card, steps in with almost no preparation, and becomes a hero. But the reality is often far darker. Many fighters accept short notice fights because they're afraid to say no. They're afraid of being skipped, forgotten, or pushed aside. The aftermath. No one talks about. The lights fade, the cheers stop, the pain stays. Long after their final fight, many fighters struggle quietly in ways the fans never see. Chronic pain, long-term injuries, mental health battles, financial instability. The UFC celebrates champions while their bodies are strong, but rarely shows what happens when the years of damage finally catch up.
Take a look here. There's an elbow. Chuck comes forward with the right hand. And Rich lands right on the jaw with his right. Follow-up left hook. And that's it.
Silence, control, and the power behind the curtain. One company. Total control. The UFC controls almost everything. Who fights, when they fight, how they're ranked, what sponsors they can have, and how publicly they're allowed to speak. Fighters who complain risk punishment, fewer opportunities, lower placements, longer breaks between fights. The truth behind the empire. Every empire has a price, and fighters paid it. The UFC's rise is one of the greatest sports success stories ever told. But behind every highlight reel is a chapter written in pain, risk, sacrifice, and silence. If the UFC truly celebrated its fighters, would these stories still be hidden in the shadows? Or is it time the sport's biggest organization finally faces the darker chapters of its own history? Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more interesting videos.